Welcome to the Your Message Received podcast. And now, taking your message to the finish line, your host, John Duffin.
Hey folks, John Duffin here with Duffin Media. Welcome back to another episode of Your Message Received. Your Message Received is the home, the platform, the podcast to help you find your best, most true, authentic business voice. Heck, find your most authentic voice in any and every which way. Get what you want, find what you need, improve your results, make billions of dollars, find a person of your dreams. Can't quite guarantee the last two, but we're working on that. First ones we can. And I am thrilled that you keep coming back, joining us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Folks, the reason I get so excited and I am so confident we can deliver those authentic aspirations is because I get to find people who walk the walk. And today is no exception. Michael Ray, who I'm such a fan of, who is the director of the Smile Project Louisville. Welcome to the show, bud.
What's up, my friend? Hey, good morning. How are you, brother?
Fantastic. Fantastic. By the way, I hope I got Louisville correctly. I tried to do that. I had an uncle who was born in Louisville, Kentucky. So
Louisville.
No, thank
Louis,
you. All right. Louisville.
Not Louis for King Louis, which it's named for, but Louisville. But
Louisville,
yes, you did
right?
very
Okay.
well.
Smile Project Louisville, which the whole purpose and point of this, from how I understand it, is through these random acts of kindness and smiles, you can make somebody a little bit happier. Michael, I am such a fan, as it feels like everyone else is too. If you follow Michael on social media at all, LinkedIn is where that's the one I follow the most. I find the story extraordinary. Michael, for you, I go through the bio real fast that you come at. I love the way that you talk about 20 plus tumultuous years in real estate. So yes, I am a licensed real estate agent. I'm a deep admirer that you did 20 plus years. It speaks volumes of you.
I even did it when I say it shit the bed. Yes, I was knee deep.
Oh, yeah.
In that part of history. Yeah, absolutely.
So I love the fact, like, and you also know when and how to evolve. And I think that's damn impressive because, folks, if you're here for a lot of real estate back and forth today, probably not the episode. I became a fan. I don't know anything about this. What I was a fan of is the energy from a video, which is saying a lot, right? I mean, in terms of the fact of how somebody is able to project through. And Michael, when you follow him on social media, the energy just is like electric. And what I wanted to ask you, Michael, growing up, was that always you? Was that always your nature?
Yeah, I think so. I'm the oldest of 7 children. Mm-hmm. I had a very loud, boisterous father, an extended family, an uncle that was a high extrovert. Mm-hmm. And I'm not big in astrology, but I'm a Leo. So mm-hmm. I think that aspect of that fire, kind of always shined. And I think that what I always found even growing up is that I just liked people. I loved social interaction, engaging, and that was obviously in a large family, an extended family, a very consistent, open thing. So absolutely.
I love that. And so I like that you're able to take or at least absorb from your family as you're growing up. I am racing along the bio simply because the parts that are the most fun for me is how I get to know Michael Ray. And it was just random follows. And I watched this guy who is, as I said, electrically charged. Immediately, I'm going to ask you about Maddie, who is, I would say, if not partner, at least co-star of what I feel like is the extended program. Talk to us about Maddie.
Yeah, I think that it is what you just said. She's a rock star. I like to give her a lot of times, all of that street credit. She's my partner in crime in a lot of what I have done because she has taught me so many life lessons. I think about it occasionally, and I take a lot of long walks, and I was taking one yesterday. And a lot of times when I do that, it gives me the ability to kind of reflect and be with myself. And a lot of times I do it through music, and that music then takes me to places, but it takes me right back to the question you just asked, and that is, Maddie also saved my life. And I mean that in that literal sense in which, I looked at that lens through her. And when I was in some of the deepest, darkest places, that a human being can find itself and really thought that my life had no value, it was always that simplicity of the nonverbal emotion. And I say nonverbal because Maddie is primarily 99% nonverbal. And I say 99% because she can singularly say handful of words. I could probably count on one hand, maybe a half a dozen words she can say. She's never put two words together. So if you're a parent, if you're a parent, John, one of the things we always take for granted is our children always say, well, I love you, Dad. Well, I've never heard that from my daughter. So, again, for me, that foundation of what I've kind of created just came from the simplicity of a little girl who has special needs that can't say those words. So that affirmation always was when I said, do you love Dad? It was the affirmation of, a smile. And then when I was in those deep, darkest places, life for her is just very simple.
Okay.
It's stress-free. There's no anxiety. You kind of, live in a state of unconditional love and almost really just infinite joy. And I started looking at a lot of those things and that relationship I had with her. And I'm like, we overcomplicate things in life. So I started looking and chasing different things in life, through the lens and that relationship with her.
Love that. Hey, let me, like I said, you've talked about it. You said it a couple of times, some of the deepest, darkest moments of my life. And I know it just, if you follow along or do the homework, that, like I said, you're very transparent in terms of the way that you discuss what's occurred to you. I mean, look, you're a father. And I don't mean to rattle these off like bullet points because they're not.
No, you're okay. Yeah.
They're not nothing. But what I would say is right off the bat, clearly a survivor in the sense that it's like you've lost a child, which I have no reference point for. You've gone through a divorce. You went through a tumultuous career. When you were in the phases of that, right? What were some of the things that you tried before you got to this conclusion? Meaning in terms of, like the project before that, like how did you survive?
Absolutely. And for me, I'll kind of start with what, one of the first things you said, the struggle was different in losing a son in which I had an identical twin brother, Sam did. So the struggle in my marriage back then where we really didn't comfort each other is we struggled separately. And I always had this constant reminder of what Charlie looked like. And then as the industry tanked, I guess back then, my ego was a big thing in which you always feel like you're prepared and you have enough money saved. You blink and you go, how is it when I was making $200,000-300 grand a year that I'm now broke?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to move from the house that had a giant mortgage payment because my son died in there. So that struggle in how years kind of took hold, and I then found myself, my drug of choice was sugar.
Okay. Oh, okay.
That was my coping mechanism.
Okay.
And then, living in a 4,500 square foot house, making all that money, driving new cars, and then you wake up and you're divorced, you've lost your house, and I moved back in with my parents.
How old were you?
And was 43 years old.
Okay.
43 years old, moving back in with his parents.
Mm-hmm.
And my career had fallen apart, and I was delivering pizzas full time.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times I was better during the day, but I think a lot of times our coping mechanisms when we're by ourselves, when you have that social interaction and then you go home and you're in a different environment, for me, then I turned to sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And I ballooned up, man. I gained all kinds of weight, was up to like 250 pounds. And then, when you look at yourself and where you've come, my epiphany then
Right.
was I pulled up in front of a church.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat in the car, and I didn't have the intestinal fortitude to go inside, but I sat in the car for about an hour just crying and knowing that I wanted to go home because I thought my life had no value. Mm-hmm. And that was it. We're going to mail it in. There was nothing else in life to live for at this point. I can't deal with the pain anymore. But I would tell you that I heard the voice of God. Mm-hmm. And that he said, son, I have something big in store for you. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, but I drove home. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I didn't take my life. And I started doing things a little bit, differently, at that point. When I say differently, got rid of some friendships and relationships, mm-hmm. and started consuming, different material, started working on me and losing weight and working on not only my body, but my mind, mm-hmm. and started finding myself in a different place. And I always kept going back to that moment of, okay, God, if you got something big in store for me, when in the hell is it going to happen? Because obviously,
reasonable question.
That timing is much different. Our level of patience, I think, as human beings, we want things, in the here and now. And, it still took a few years to get to that place of everything that I started doing to kind of really change my life for the good at that point, to where I was moving beyond the grief, of my son, all of those things that we hold on to as human beings in our mind. And then it kind of helped me understand another moment, in which, wow, okay, this is maybe the start of something big,
I want to know what that moment is, but I have one question before, because it's what was it like for the remainder of the family? You just said something a moment ago when you talked about Charlie's twins, like that you were grieving alone. Sam, correct? Right? Were you in an active relationship with Sam at that point, or had everything separated based on the divorce and all that stuff?
So yes and no, in which my son was 3 months old.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So when I say yes and no, when you say active, right. How active is it at 3 months? There were added elements to it in which, I take you back to that day. A lot of times if I asked you if what you were doing September 16th, 2006, you would have no idea for the most part. But I could describe the day as a T because it was my ex-wife's birthday. And I caught all kinds of grief, mm-hmm. choosing on her birthday to go to a college football game. So I caught all kinds of grief. I left. But, when you talk about that relationship, it's how we've all handled it, early on in that process. And when I say early on, for the first few years, my ex-wife and I grieved separately.
Yeah.
And we did not know how to emotionally and mentally support each other. And I'll tell anybody this, man, we waited 3.5 years too long to get help.
I got you.
And at that point, we were broken. Mm-hmm. When we really tried to professionally fix our marriage. And when you look at my children, they have internalized and processed all of it differently too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of it, I don't know if Maddie truly understood, as much. She at that time would have been, I guess, 8 or so.
Got it.
But also having special needs and the intellectual mind of maybe a 6 to 8 year old too. But my one daughter, Lucy, was about 6 at the time, and my other daughter was 11. So you're at different ages and how they process things, and even to this day now, where one's 26 and one's 22,
right?
They still look at it radically, differently too. So it was a big part of, also not only our own grief, but the grief of your children, and then still having, somebody who's 3 months old that you gotta take care of, and
literally
all
care
of the inner work. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I'm like literally, right? Actively care for, Michael, I was going to say, so you said something, and this part I really liked, in the sense that you started to take action. Now, obviously, it's not optimal when people are grieving or handling situations separately, but you made some choices in regards to that day at the church. And you started to, as you said, treat your body a little differently. What you were feeding yourself intellectually was different. What were some of the early books, inspirations, things that you were gravitating toward that were helping you?
Wow. A lot was, I'm not a Bible reader.
Okay.
But I take in, I take in, scripture and faith a little bit differently, in the aspect of, even like I still to this day, watch a lot of things that might be, it's probably my ADHD. I can give something 30 to 60 seconds, but again, I process that. So I watched a lot of that. I started reading, I'm trying to think now, several books by John Gordon.
Okay.
He's really big into positivity and mindset. Gary Vee is the same way. He's a little bit more over the top.
Yep.
But mindset is everything, to him, and how we think. Again, instead of, and I'm trying to give you an example of an activity, I would choose to go to, instead of doing one thing, I would go to the gym. Yeah. Or I truly, at times, I'd go watch two movies by myself in the theater.
Right.
So to try to occupy that space more healthy, rather than being at home, being consumed, eating 3,000, calories of sugar at 9 o'clock at night, and going to sleep, and then wondering why, well, I'm overweight, Yeah.
I got you.
We become a product of, we tell our children this all the time, you're a product of your choices. So if garbage in, garbage out. So if you start feeding that with the right things, not only, nutrition is not only food, but what we put up in our brains.
And that applies way past the telling the kids. It applies to me personally. It applies to, our audience as well too. It matters. I don't always make the right choices, so I'm grateful when I'm reminded. When did the evolution that you were like, I see something, God tells you, when I heard you, that there's something big in store for you, and then you're like, okay, so where is it? And I often ask, and what is it? So when did you start to see and visualize the random acts of kindness, the smiles? When did that become an action for you?
So there's two things. The foundation, when you build a house, you got to lay the foundation first.
Right.
So the foundation was laid by Maddie.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I understood nonverbal communication, And then obviously, once you have that foundation, you got to frame it and build up. Well, that event occurred when I rolled through, wait for it, a Wendy's. I as we all do, not on Wendy's. I don't care what drive-through it is, but I think we take that for granted so many times when we encounter strangers. But for me, it was just a cold, late February morning where I wanted chili. I was in love with the chili from Wendy's. So
no argument here.
So I rolled through Wendy's and I got the chili. But what is, generally not the norm is you don't always just pull over unless something was wrong. But for me, when I drove through that drive-through and I had that interaction with a drive-through worker, it was the need to have quick reflection from what it did to me. So I pulled over and I had another God moment where I sat there and I broke down crying and I was like, God, please tell me what to do, And at that moment, I said, the Holy Spirit spoke to me. I got out of the car, which when you walk back to the drive-through window was a little taboo because look, 100% of the time they think one thing, sir, what's wrong? That they got something wrong. But I would tell you, as I sat and wept for about 5 minutes in the car and felt that God talked to me, I needed to go thank. I was grateful for what Chantrell, how she made me feel.
Wow.
So I literally said, thank you. And then I said, I don't know why, but I feel the need to take a picture of the two of us.
Okay.
So I took a picture. And then as I drove away then, over the next several days, it started in my mind marinating how it made me feel in the significance of that simple interaction. For 30, 40 seconds with an absolute stranger, that I found myself a few days later in the gym and I took another picture with a stranger.
Got it.
And then a few days later, I took another picture. And then all of a sudden I started going, wow, I feel so good when I'm having these very short encounters with strangers in just absolute random places that I started to come alive. So I started taking pictures for the next several months. And then it was just a conversation with my oldest daughter. And she's like, hey, you need to start sharing these to social media.
Right.
And that kind of evolved too, to kind of get to the place, where you're really, wanting to go. Is I then started finding more about these people when I was having this interaction. So it wasn't just, hey, I'm here today at Starbucks with John smiling. It was, hey, this is what is amazing about John. So I did that literally for the better part of 18 months. I kept sharing them to social media. It was resonating with people. And then truly, I would tell you again, I had another God moment. I'll never forget it. It was like 6:30 in the morning. I got out of bed to go to the bathroom.
Right.
And I took about 2 steps and I literally stopped dead in my tracks and thought from a dead sleep, what if I did a random act of kindness for a stranger to make them smile?
Wow.
So then it got me reflecting on that. So the pictures then evolved into going, oh, wow, what would I do? Where would I go? How would I do it? Kind of situation. So the very first one we did, I decided to go into the inner city of Louisville. I went into a grocery store. I walked that grocery store for almost 10 minutes. And I just said, God, please tell me who to go bless.
Okay.
Because as I walked around the store, I had no idea. So,
how could you, right?
Who in the hell am I going to do something for?
Yeah.
But I would tell you then again, as I have so often, in which I just get this feeling, and I did, and I walked down the aisle, and I happened to be a single mother of 2 kids in the cart there shopping. and I gave her a $50 gift card to Kroger's.
Wow.
And I felt the emotion of just in that moment of making someone feel good and smile. And I started to understand then in doing it, well, it's what Maddie had done all along, is that smile made me feel loved. So all I was trying to do is give people a glimpse of, strangers, love, smiling, and how it can bring us so much joy. So I started sharing those to social media, and as everything obviously, at times evolves, it then, it was always by chance, because I just put myself in situations for the first couple of months. But as I started sharing these to social media, people were like, how do you find these people?
Right.
And then it shifted into, well, what if I told you about someone who was going through a hard time in life, and that maybe they just needed to find a way to smile through such adversity. And I was like, wow, what an interesting concept. Right. I'm like, okay, tell me more about these, and that's where it started to evolve then, where it just became so much more intentional, in which I knew going in who the person was and what their story was, and really just trying to impact and influence. I often say this when I've done the videos, John.
Yep.
I'm really trying to touch the life of two people. First, it's who I'm with. And even though I video all of these, I never try to lose sight of I'm with someone. And first and foremost, it's about the person I'm with. But then the secondary piece is, when you choose then to video and share it, okay, how can I impact the life of one other person that's watching? We get caught up in the vanity of analytics and metrics and all of
how many likes, how many followers, am I pretty?
To some extent. But if you can impact the life of, and I mean impact the life of one human being,
right?
It's no different. I mean, how was I going to think my life was going to change at a Wendy's drive-thru? So sure, it can change, yeah.
So let me ask you this. With these individuals, as it's now starting to morph and evolve a little bit, and you're getting to this place where it's like, people are giving you their story. These are typically surprises, correct? The randomness is for them still, right?
That is absolutely true. 100% of the time, we've never had someone know we are physically coming. So even though it was different in the aspect, instead of like walking into Kroger's where I did not know who I wanted to surprise
I'll pick you. Right.
Now I knew, and I'll keep it real. I knew that I was going to a school for Carly, who was a third grade school teacher. So yes, we were going in, but Carly had no idea we were showing up.
But here's what my question, which is Carly or anyone else. My thought is, when people are either not in a good place or are going through certain things or whatever the case may be, you lived it, and we all have, and you're not in the right frame of mind. Have people push back like, no, I don't want this. I would feel that's still a gutsy move on your part, because it's like not everybody receives that information the same way. So how have you been able to make that work so that people are not feeling uncomfortable or weird, or this is a Michael thing, not for, how do you do it?
So one of the reoccurring questions that I started to ask people when I was doing these things was, what makes you amazing? Now,
yep.
I am going to answer your question by telling you what makes me amazing.
And I was going to ask you. So great.
And I believe that, and this is not ego, because I believe that we all have something amazingly beautiful to offer the world. And a lot of times, again, when we're in that headspace, we kind of get away from that. But for me, those things are, in answering your question now, is I have the innate ability to make people feel comfortable, to make people feel loved, to make people feel safe. I'm incredibly charming. I'm a wordsmith. So, and I have this unique, very good energy.
Yeah.
And I think then people feel that. So when you feel that, people are very welcoming, because a lot of what I have done in so many cases, I can't say 100%, but probably 90% plus, I have my arm around people. I'm in people's personal space and things when I've done it. And that was probably one of the greatest challenges when COVID happened and we didn't stop, was the ability to still do it and trying to be, as real as you could, but going, dear Lord, how do we do it from 6 feet away?
Tell us the part that I read about you wrapped in plastic.
So the very first one I ever did wasn't plastic, but I was having to go. It was around Easter,
right?
So we weren't even weeks into it, and this lady was, I think, in her mid-80s and battling some health issues.
Right.
And I said to myself, going, wow, they say you wouldn't touch someone with a 10-foot pole.
Oh my God.
So I legitimately went to Home Depot and I got an extension pole and I made it 10 feet. And then I did a few where I literally, when I passed the balloons, I handed it from 10 feet away. But to go back, we blessed a priest who was celebrating not only his 77th birthday, but his 50th anniversary of ordination.
Wow.
And I knew that I would not be able to leave this priest without hugging him. So I went back to, I think, Lowe's or Home Depot, and I got this giant clear plastic drop cloth. So when I was at the very end, I was like, look, people, as they say, don't try this shit at home. But I dropped the drop cloth over me. I went in, I hugged it out with Father Jack, and we did it safely, so.
That just the verbal part of that story makes me happy. And that's where I would have to agree when you answered your own question, what makes you amazing, that unique ability to make people feel comfortable and safe. That's big.
And you know what? A lot of the only one other that comes to mind, and I got scolded for it. When I say I got scolded, I'll get to it in a second. But I got asked to go. This woman needed a kidney transplant. And I was like, wow, I got this big audience now. Let's go do something for her, but also make this appeal. To people in Louisville. I'm like, if there's anybody out there. So we were in the parking lot of Myers. Snowflakes were falling as big as your fist. And I'm doing it from 6 feet away. And then she started crying. So, I think the natural instincts at that case, at least I would hope for most people, is I went in and I hugged her.
Yeah, I'm stunned.
So we got done with the video. And in a lot of cases locally, my fiance, Molly, was the one behind the camera. We get in the car and she goes, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. I'm like, what did I do?
Right.
And she's like, you hugged her. And I debated for a hot second if I was going to share that, but I end up, and this is what I try to tell people too, we spoke a little bit about this before we started, talking about authenticity, and that is, I don't edit. The camera starts and it stops, and that camera is just an iPhone, and I keep it real, and I'm like, no, that's what happened. It was real. That's what's going to be shared. I don't care if there's a handful of people that are going to get upset over it, because that's what love is all about when people sometimes are struggling, is we just kept it the way it was.
Personal and real. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Molly's been a part of this in addition to holding the camera. I wondered about that. I was like, your arms can't be. And especially if you're putting your arm around somebody, then I couldn't imagine that you're doing all this and then that. And so Molly's been a part of this for the whole ride, or for a lot of it, or in terms of the project?
The whole ride.
That's great.
So I started seeing Molly in the fall of 2017.
Okay. Right.
The interesting thing about Molly is that I knew her casually from church. I had heard she had gone through a divorce. I had reached out and sent her a message talking about that. And then I said, this was late August of 2017. I said, hey, if you ever want to go get a cup of coffee, some lunch, a dinner, whatever. And she said she appreciated the offer, but life was too complicated for her then. And then 3 months later, the Saturday after Thanksgiving in 2017, I don't know where, she messaged me back and she said, hey, I'm ready to go have that drink. So we did. So of course that was the fall of 2017. And then the moment at Wendy's was in February of 2018.
Right.
So it was the ability to start talking it out. And really it was somewhat private early on.
Yep.
Talking it out with, kind of her, and never thinking it would go, this direction. And I had probably done maybe, I'm going to say, a couple of dozen random acts of kindness locally in 2019 until a close friend was like, share this to LinkedIn. And I was like, why in the hell would you share this to LinkedIn? You go look for a job or network, whatever, never thinking. And he literally just like smacked me upside the head for a couple of months. I finally just said, okay, the hell with it. I'll share it to LinkedIn. And I did. So instead of then the ability to, again, being closed-minded, thinking, okay, it's all about my community. Well, that community then opened up.
Yes.
To this entire country, globally. And now when I talk about how many random acts of kindness I've done to make people smile, well, it's come off of the relationships that I've built primarily on LinkedIn. So when I say that I went to Texas and did over 40 random acts of kindness, and in Florida and California, we probably did near 150 in 3 states. It came off of the relationships from people that I had formed on LinkedIn.
See, I feel like it's one more barrier to entry that you're able to push past. I'm going to come back to that in a second, because to me, I feel, stay with it. It's like the sense that these linear sorts of, no, that belongs here and this belongs there. You just go do it. And how much time would you say from starting on LinkedIn to realizing, wait a minute, I'm getting a lot of traction here. How long did that process, do you think, how long did it take?
Maybe about a month.
A month. See,
and I say that because all of a sudden it seemed like other people of influence on the platform started noticing what I was doing. And therefore then started kind of coming into my world. And, look, the one thing about social media is, and I often jokingly say, I could put out a video today, or anyone could for that matter, saying, look, I'm going to be at First and Main at noon giving out $100 bills. I got 10 grand, show up. But if no one sees it,
no one's showing up.
No one may show up. So the reality of social media is, well, how do you then get to the top of the feed where people, and that's where, look, maybe it was magical divine intervention off of the backbone of a lot of really good people who cared about my story and what I was trying to do to create change. Then all of a sudden I just started finding my place at, when people open LinkedIn, one of the first couple of things they ever saw were me.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore then it's the importance of if content or what something is doing in this world resonates, I often tell people, well, you got to do something about it. And that is, you have to do those things that are engineered on those platforms. You got to hit like, you got to leave a comment, how it made you feel, because again, that's what keeps you at the top of really any platform for people to be able to see. So where it was important to me, and again, it was divine intervention where I stayed there then, is people saw me all the time then.
Mm-hmm.
So it helped engaging and building those relationships mm-hmm. with hundreds and thousands of people mm-hmm. on LinkedIn.
When did the balloons start?
Interesting. I had probably done at least a half a dozen to 8. And then I didn't take them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took them for, I got asked to go make a mother smile who had lost a child too. So when I did that, I made that decision to let those balloons go to heaven for my son and her daughter.
Mm.
And I really then started understanding just the simplicity of the impact of the balloons. And the secondary piece was when Maddie went with me, Maddie loved holding the balloons.
Oh.
Again, it's where you and I and most people would think it's just the normal function of doing something as it would relate to work. It brought that kid so much joy of just holding balloons. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of became, this staple. And it's interesting when after the first few months of taking the pictures, my oldest daughter, who was the advertising creative design major, created a logo for me, but the logo was primarily orange. But then after the balloons, we're probably 2 years in, and she goes, we have to change this. We have to infuse the yellow that I had been using and not thinking that, it was also creating this impact. And when I've gone and done so many on the road outside of Louisville in other states, it's one of those things of importance to other people. They're like, no, I'm gonna go get the balloons. It was something in seeing the simplicity of a yellow smiling balloon that, again, you asked that question earlier.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when the balloons were present too, people felt that love and that goodness different. And that energy, just from a balloon. Yeah.
Well, you brought up the sense, and you were talking about working the LinkedIn platform. The reason I mentioned the balloons, I got to tell you, there was 2 things, probably more, but maybe 3 things that I think that kept me coming back to you in a sense of watching, staying engaged, thinking this guy is great, and one of them happened to be the balloons. Like one of them happened to be. It was like this sense of, and why were they yellow? And that's a whole different, and now I know. You know what I mean? And why is everything yellow? It's perfect. But it was the balloons, your daughter, and that kinetic energy that you talk about when you were just defining or answering the question, what makes you amazing? And I feel like from a business sense, they all made great sense. They were all great choices, and the consistency and blah, blah, but I think one of the coolest things that you're identifying, by the way, way back in this conversation, you referenced Gary Vee, and Gary Vee now, like say in the last week, has come roaring back to LinkedIn as a platform. And Gary Vee is somebody who makes people feel things. And I think these are the reminders that business is not cold. It doesn't have to be cold.
Absolutely not.
So let me ask you, for other people me, others, our audience, whatever. What are some steps, because you can't be physically everywhere all the time? What are some steps that people could take to find their own inner joy? What do you suggest when people? Well,
Yeah, I mean,
I think,
I think it's different for everyone,
mm-hmm.
but yet, a lot of times, and I've read a lot of things in the work that Mother Teresa did,
Right,
and talking about her working the poor with the poorest of the poor. When I say the poorest of the poor, I ain't talking homeless, in this country. I'm talking about people living, on dirt,
India,
maybe not eating for days and things.
mm-hmm.
But she often talked about the joy they had.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we've heard a lot of people talk about this, but it's how we look at life and where we find that joy and being still grateful, and that level of gratitude you have
Mm-hmm.
for where you still are. And what I really try to impress upon others, I was going to say people, but it's people.
Yeah.
It's to me. So when I looked at Mother Teresa, those people, even though life was so incredibly challenging,
Right,
and they could lack faith, I think where they still had this level of infinite joy and gratitude is because their circle and their people in their life still found, they could find happiness.
mm-hmm.
So for me, what I try to impress upon others is again, where I found joy when I was struggling and taking those pictures is the joy that I got from social interaction from other people.
Mm-hmm.
So immerse yourself. If life gets hard,
Yeah.
how can you find more meaningful, loving relationships? Mm-hmm. Either they already exist or you lose your job.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe go volunteer. Mm-hmm. Don't get within those confines and walls of your house, to where that's what I did. Yep. And finding those dark places. And kind of what piggybacks that is, mm-hmm. what I saw as I evolved is that I was broken at home. Mm-hmm. And if you're broken at home, we have a tendency as human beings to take that into that business and professional world. Yep. And it can impact that piece of our life. If you're broken at work, mm-hmm. we have a tendency a lot of times to take that at home. So it's the ability to still smile through adversity. And we all internalize too, because that level of adversity and challenge is different. Mm-hmm. Mine, I would tell you, was extreme, but sometimes too, again, how we process things is different. And that's why I often say I'm not here to judge your journey,
Mm-hmm. I love that. Hey, just two more questions for the moment. One of them is this: what makes someone authentic to you?
It doesn't get any simpler than this. Just be you. We're not here to create these acts for people. Mm-hmm. I've posted it probably now 100 times, and I probably should know it by heart, but it's like, it's a Dr. Seuss saying, today you are you. There's no one truer than you. So again, if you find that place where you understand that you are amazing in that inner beauty, mm-hmm. just be you. That's how you were created, in God's image. He created you perfect. He doesn't make mistakes. So therefore, then just do you. It doesn't really, I think at times we overcomplicate that. But so authenticity is just being me.
Right. I love it.
One more question. Which is all you need.
I love this. I love this. One more question. By the way, it happens to be yours. So I'm going to steal it and turn to you. What do you think is life's greatest blessing?
I absolutely know this. Love. It's love, for me at least. And that's an interesting question too, because where I used to ask that singular question, now, and when I say now, I guess maybe a few months ago, I started asking that second question after what makes you amazing is what would you consider life's greatest blessing?
Right.
And again, when I get for one or both of those, I get deer in headlights going, holy shit, I'm not, no, you are amazing. And usually the first things that come to people is what they love about themselves. And then when you talk and think about what is life's greatest blessing, I just try to give to the person in the moment, and again, someone watching, where to be grateful in life. So when people talk about their spouses, their children, you know, a lot of times it goes back to people, and it's no different than me saying love. To me, life's greatest blessing is understanding not only being loved, but giving love and the ability to love a stranger non-verbally.
I got to tell you, man, this is a beautiful conversation. Fun, easy, authentic. You made it really powerful for me. Michael Ray from the Smile Project Louisville. I'll keep on the last word. Everything else I feel good about, right? This is one heck of a story that needs to continue to be shared. Thank you so much for making the time for me today, man. You are an absolute treasure. Thank you.
Well, you know what? Thank you, because I often say it's a two-way street. I'm grateful that you wanted to bring me into your world with your audience, and I would leave people with this.
Yes.
To me, there's one singular quote among the thousands that I've ever read that resonates, and that's Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they won't forget how you made them feel. I don't remember what Chantrell said to me at Wendy's. I remember how she made me feel. And that's why when I give people balloons and gift cards and all of that, they spend it, the balloons die, but they can go back and reflect on how I made them feel. So go make someone feel loved today.
That's a fabulous way to close this out. Hey, your social media links will be in the bio for this podcast. Your website will be in the bio for this website. Are they the best ways to reach you?
Absolutely. And people at times are fascinated on LinkedIn. My phone number and email, and people text me and I reply immediately and they're like, oh my God, it's you. I'm like, well, yeah, my number's there for a reason. So yes, I respond to 100% of everything that I get on any platform, and you can text or call me because people do.
I think this is amazing. Michael Ray, thanks so much again for being here today. You're an absolute blast, and you just made my day, and you just made me, and I know us, feel fantastic. So thanks for all of this, my friend. Absolutely.
God bless. Thanks, John. I appreciate
it. And folks, you've just heard another episode of Your Message Received. Keep liking, following, sharing, tell your friends, tell your family, and we'll keep driving outstanding people right to your front door. Have a great day, folks. Be well. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
And now, making its way across the finish line, Your Message Received has been a production of Duffin Media.